Well, hello there, everybody. Happy Prosperity Day. It is Monday, and well, if you're here, you're prospering and you have fulfilled your destiny for the moment, which is kind of cool when you think about it. Hopefully, we're all fulfilling, if that is the case, while we're here, our destiny.
Well, hello there,
There we
everybody.
go. I'll get to hear myself twice. I love it. It's like, hey, man. It's like I can see myself coming and going. It's far out to experience time travel. So again, welcome everybody. Thank you for being here. What a group. Let me just speak favor over us. Favor works. Saw it in action. Nothing missing, nothing broken. Saw that in action too. Peace. But yeah, anyway, um, everybody knows by now that what a series of storms. I mean, I was listening this morning, and I think they said confirmed right in my area a dozen tornadoes. Wow. And I think they said about a dozen people have lost their lives in it. So it was intense. But I have to say, not where I lived. Y'all saw the video, and I just want to say thank you. Um, it's amazing when you see things that are bad and they're really bad. It was bad. There was no exaggerating, no hyperbole. It was bad. Um, I don't know if y'all saw some of the pictures, but these were really big tornadoes. I mean, they were huge. Um, and they were mean. You know? One, I think, stayed on the ground for like 14 miles, just a path of destruction. Um, and yeah, as I said in the video yesterday that I posted, we got the alarms and the things on the phone, imminent property damage, uh, you know, seek shelter now. And I mean, that just intensifies it, it's like, okay. And we could see the lightning, out to the west and you know heading to the south. And the one that they said that we were in the direct path of decided to go east, which was cool. Not well, that sounds cavalier and it sounds cruel, but the one aspect, yes, there was property damage and loss of life. But, you know, sometimes when the shit goes down, that's not the time to be building your house. That's not the time unless you have been well versed and trained walking outside and speaking to the elements. Um, I don't recommend that unless, again, you have worked your way up. This group has, collectively, individually. Many of you, I think Elderberry, you're just a little bit south of me. There was a number. I know Grandpa O'Brien was in Indiana. They took hits. And then we have a lot of y'all folks down in the South. See, you can't take the country out of the man or the boy, You can take the boy out of the man, but yeah, I still say y'all. I still say yes, ma'am. It's yes, sir. I mean, it's just the way it is. But in any case, this group has you know, we were taking small bites. We broke a drought, which was remarkable. So many interesting things back in those early days. Remember then that rainbow came right down on top of our house? I mean, it was right on top of the house. That was some weird stuff. And then Friday, you know, it's on the record. 48 hours ago, I was sitting right here and saying, I got this bullseye painted on that area. They weren't hyping that. They were spot on. And I said, we spoke against it. We bound it. We spoke calmness, peace. That's nothing missing, nothing broken. And if you go back and you can look at the radar that came through, it was amazing. It just kind of So anyway, folks, thank you all. You are just amazing people. And as I said yesterday in Elderberry, we got those tall oaks as well. Um, we didn't lose a limb, literally, not a limb. The gust of wind, as I said yesterday, um, we had just finished dinner, and so I went out on the deck and, was looking, and the wind was really up. And then, holy crap. I mean, no sooner had given thanks to the elementals and, of, protecting the property and what have you. This freaking gust of wind came here, and I mean, just about knocked me on my ass. It had to be at least 65 miles an hour. Boosh. But nevertheless, it worked. And I believe we have that kind of power and authority. But you have to believe first that you have the authority. And then second, you need to believe that you have the power and that you can put the power to the authority. And no matter what's standing before you, it has to yield to your words. Yeah. So, anyway, thank you, folks. How's everyone in the chat room doing? Grace, how are you, dear? Chloe, hello. Rick, good to see you, brother. How are you feeling, by the way? Haven't, been thinking about you. Pamela, hello. Shirley and Lynn. Who else? I know I saw Lauren. Hello, Lauren. How are you? Yeah, I know it's St. Patrick Day, but I'm wearing my favorite color. It's really a cool color. Black absorbs all the colors where white rejects them all, Kind of think it's cool. And black goes with everything. Hey, Scotty boy, what's up? Uh, yeah, Elderberry didn't even, yeah, we didn't even lose power. I mean, it was like, wow. Hello, Colleen. What's up? Good to see you, darling. Truth Co-op, good to see you. Chicago, well, welcome. I almost moved to that city back in the 90s. Yeah. What a story. What a story. Hey, Bonnie, good to see you. Gaia, how are you and Paul doing? Good to see you as well. Trust all is well on the farm. Mary wins. Much love to you, darling. Que sera, sera. Whatever will be, will be. Good to see you. As Gilbert, how are you, brother? Are you going out to help these people? Well, actually, there's no damage around us. I don't know what I could really do. Um, you know, in the city, no, no, they got resources, and you know, I kind of figured, you don't need to be an outsider. That's what I'm saying. But no, I am not. And that's kind of wisdom, really. I mean, Gilbert, when you start getting at our age, brother, that's what the younger generation is there. There was something here. Yeah. But yeah, Lost in Space, what's up? I have the Maelstrom. Good to see you, DC. And Nina, hello. Good to see you as well. And Brian, good to see you, brother. As I go back, and Mr. Mission Control, hello, hello. That's so good to see everybody. So, anyway, um, hope everybody is having fun. St. Patrick's Day. We are an interesting species, are we not? So, today's title, the call it a lecture, I don't know, call it a water cooler talk, whatever. Um, some good shit really came out of, when people would take breaks, When I was the CEO of US Creative, we had, a foosball machine, we had a margarita machine, we had an espresso machine. And what was interesting is that we had whiteboards as the wall coverings. So if you're walking down the hall and you had an idea, you could stop there and just write it out. Anyway, the point is, in these water cooler breaks, I mean, remarkable stuff was brought forth. And now I know is that, we were using a form of channeling, you know. Yeah, anyway, y'all been there. You know that. Uh, see, Lynn, there you go. Whether she says always takes care of her. Yeah, yeah, nature is our friend. And I think that, Um, Nature responds to that. I was out talking to the trees on Friday, and I enjoy those trees. And my neighbor saw me, I was just laying hands on the trees, just talking to them. Yeah. If you're not in the inside, that, and you're looking outside, looking in, that can be pretty weird. They're going like, what the hell? But if he was ever to ask, I tell him, yeah, these are living beings. Um, their lives they're kind of like timepieces. And I believe they respond to you. I really do. If they know that they're appreciated by humans. Yeah. Anyway, that's just me. Uh, don't hug them on a windy day. But the other thing you have to be really careful with, Brian, on that is in this case, making sure there's no poison oak. Yeah. Constantly fighting that stuff. And it seems to be, well, I guess they got this symbiotic relationship. I don't know. But anyway, so we are witnessing the next great collapse. Um, Probably the seventh, if you go by what the scholars and the academics have to say. And I want to read you an article that, well, kind of pinpoints the problem. And let me just read this to you. It says, a growing body of research suggests that human intelligence, particularly in reasoning, problem solving, and concentration, I think we would all agree if you don't have those three, yikes. I would not be taking advice from anyone that doesn't have these three things going. But anyway, may have peaked over a decade ago and has been in decline ever since. Data from international education assessments and studies on adult cognitive skills reveal a concerning trend. Individuals across all age groups are struggling more with focus, logical reasoning, and numerical understanding. Holy crap, Batman. I mean, wow. This, for me, I, my generation, we're now up at bat, and once we're up at bat and our generation is done, we're out of here. And you millennials and the Zers and the Xers and etc., even the alphas, this is your mess. And you should take advantage of folks like myself because we have actually now are the walking embodiment of history, at least um, within the current modern age. Well, that's pretty cool. I mean, I was there, and Gilbert, I know a number of other y'all are right there with me. I mean, what we would think about what we saw. We saw the advent of machine in its ascendancy and domination over man. When I came in 1955, that was 10 years after World War II had ended. And we were dealing with alien technology. The world was emerging out of what was thought to have been the potential collapse of the modern era. It did not turn out that way, fortunately. But many say that it was actually, uh, we actually lost the war. Humanity did. And we lost it because technology, the gods, um, they never left. They found the thing. We opened Pandora's box, literally. And if you look at from my generation what we saw, we saw the world on the brink of nuclear war. Russia through its satellite, Cuba, and the whole Cuban Missile Crisis. We saw the assassination of one leader put upon the sacrificial altar, his blood and the blood of the other chosen ones that were eliminated by the current regime. And this current regime is not a party, it's not a political ideology, it's something far greater and above that, even theology, philosophy. But nevertheless, it was beginning to exert itself, and the takeover of humanity has been one that's really kind of the nudge theory. And that's how you take over a nation without a single voice of resistance. And this has been ongoing, and kind of the boomers really was witnessing all of this. And then, as I did a video 8 years ago on the Bloodline Invader series, and I showed you systematically how individuals were coming into this realm that would later become titans, dictators as to man's future, and how their influence began to grow and how it began to change and dominate us. And that's when the machines fully became integrated. And we're now living in the after effect of all of that. And the real concern is that we've seen this in our past, that humans seem to reach a pinnacle, and it's really kind of a triad. It's the intellect heightens, spirituality is heightened. These things, along with mental acuity, all seem to blossom. I contend that the thing about when music became electrified, that we witnessed, particularly the 50s into the 60s, definitely in the 70s and the 80s, and then it began to wane down. There was this creative ability of our species, and particularly where we were beginning to be influenced by the frequencies, the vibrations of electrifying the cord, and uh, it was quite amazing, and it was something to live through, as many of it. But nevertheless, within these past societies, these past civilizations, they seem to reach a pinnacle and then collapse. We seem to be repeating that pattern, and it makes you think about how old, and we talk about this in the group, is AI. But this article going on to say, it says, so on Friday, the Financial Times of Britain published an essay titled, Have Humans Passed the Peak Brain Power?, which addressed these concerns and presenting the startling evidence available. Are y'all ready for this? This does not bode well. And I really don't know, unless we take a spiritual aspect, and I don't mean by the domination of one theology, dogma, but truly a spiritual approach to this, these issues may in fact be our downfall. Long-term decline in cognitive skills. Recent results from the Program for International Student Assessment, this is PISA, PISA, an OECD-backed international exam measuring the reading, math, and science skills of 15-year-olds, indicated that test scores have been declining since 2012. While much of the recent discussions has focused on the educational disruptions caused by the COVID-19 pandemic, the data suggest that the decline in cognitive performance predates the pandemic by several years. The trend is not limited to teenagers. A separate OECD study tracking adult skills also showed similar declines across all age groups, with reductions in problem solving abilities, attention span, and even fundamental numeracy. They can't do math. Do you know my wife is a nurse, works in the hospice, the death industry, um, and so she does a lot of training. And and I guess that's the great thing about humanity. It's always wonderful to see how the youth can, move into the medical industry. And anyway, so she recently has was training one who was, I think, 21. And this girl who college the whole bit said they were doing something, and one of the doctors had some cursive writing. And she says, I can't read that. And it's not just her. They stopped teaching it. You got to ask yourself why. Basic math skills. All tests are now allowed to have electronic devices in there. I mean, this is crazy, and we're seeing it. One particular troubling statistic reveals that 1 in 3 American adults, 35%, now struggle to apply basic mathematical reasoning when evaluating the validity of statements, a sharp increase from previous years. Across high income nations, on average of 25% of adults now face the same difficulty. It's alarming to see the continued decrease in age, 50s, 40s, 30s. They're now reporting signs of early dementia. Wow. This is bad news all across the board for all of us. Um, when you start putting people, it was like this whole DEI thing. I mean, this is the most insane thing that humans of supposedly intellect would actually promote. There are certain disciplines, certain professions where DEI is not applicable. You have to have the technical skills. You can't be put in there. You remember the air traffic control thing, and they found out within the FAA through the Biden administration that the Biden administration wanted to put bed-bound, mentally deficient individuals into key positions. That's crazy. And this is proof of it. Get this one. The average American reads a reported 4 books per year. Globally, this is about a third of the global average of 12. The average in Britain is 15 and in France 14. Now, I'd be willing to bet that if everyone they did an honest study, and let's say the recent graduating class from high school seniors graduating, right? I wonder how many books they read. And then let's take it to the next one, which would be getting your 4 year degree if that's where you went, or an apprenticeship. And so typically that's in your early 20s. How many books do they read? I think I read somewhere that there are people who don't read books at all. Not at all. Even their online screen time, they do not read books. They do not have the mental power of remembering. They can't focus that long. I mean, like I said, you don't think that this is not going to be the collapse? The role of digital media and information overload. Hello. Researchers suggest that these declines in cognitive ability may be linked to the rapid shift in how people consume information. The rise of digital media has reshaped human attention, moving people away from focused reading and problem solving towards constant engagement with fast paced, visually driven content. Mm, mm, mm. Back in my Pentecostal days, I'd be saying, brother and sister, this is bad news. You'd be saying, where's God in all this? Yeah. Well, where is that happening? Yeah. Or the gods. I think maybe the gods have returned because they know they've seen this happen before. According to data from the Monitoring the Future study, which has tracked American high school students for a decade, reports of difficulty thinking, concentrating, or learning new things were stable through the 1990s and 2000s. Cheers, everyone. Love that tea. However, starting in the mid 2010s, the number of students experiencing these difficulties increased dramatically. A clear correlation between these black mirror devices, these portals, which, we all think are marvelous pieces of technology. And I'm on the record. When my time is ready to leave this place, I will be telling everybody, I told you so. It's taken over. And look at what it's doing to humanity. Wow, and particularly here in the United States. Okay. This time frame aligns with the growing dominance of smartphones, social media, and algorithm-driven content, which presents a constant stream of updates, notifications, and distractions. And when you correlate this to the reports that they're now seeing, particularly the younger generations, um, with AI coming into the equation, within a decade, that generation will not be able to distinguish between what is real and what is not. Whoa. And these are going to be the future nurses, doctors, electricians. Okay. Social media platforms are fundamentally reshaping the way people process information, leading to shorter attention spans and reduced cognitive endurance. With endless scrolling features, rapid fire video content, and algorithm driven feeds, platforms like TikTok, Instagram, and Twitter condition users to expect instant gratification and quick dopamine hits. Don't tell me that this thing ain't alive. It knows exactly what it's doing. And folks, human beings, Homo sapiens sapiens, this is a sure recipe for disaster. You do a study on what happens to your brain when it is subjected to constant dopamine hits. What it does, it discourages deep thought and sustained focus. And it's addictive. It can be as painful as if something, let's say, a double compound fracture. Wow. Studies show that the average attention span has declined over the past decade, with users struggling to engage with long form content, whether in reading, discussions, or problem solving. Now, you look at leaders. When you go to the polls and you vote these people in, or if you don't vote, well, you're just basically, um, you know, by default will go to whatever they decide it's going to go to. But as I have said, as an advocate of rebuilding Congress's credibility, every person in Congress must disclose their IQ scores and their FICO scores before, and any politician in the future who wants to run for those offices, that would be required. It'd be federal law. You have to submit, and it has to be through a third party verification of what your credit score has been for the last 5 years and what is your IQity. Hmm. And that's this dopamine hit. It's it's crazy. So studies showed that an average attention span has declined over the past decade, with users struggling to engage with long-form content, whether in reading, discussions, or problem solving. The constant barrage of notifications and infinite content loops promote passive consumption over active engagement, rewiring the brain to crave speed over substance. As a result, many individuals, especially younger generations, find it increasingly difficult to concentrate on tasks that require prolonged effort, such as reading books, studying complex subjects, or critically evaluating information. This shift has profound implications for education, productivity, and even public discourse, as nuanced discussions are often replaced by bite sized reactions, superficial engagement, and emotional knee jerk responses. It says in his latest book, last year's The Anxious Generation, social psychologist Jonathan Haidt warns that the rise of smartphone culture and social media addiction is fueling a crisis in mental health and cognitive development, particularly among young people. Hyatt argues that the shift towards constant digital stimulation has led to a decline in attention spans, reduced problem solving abilities, and increased anxiety levels, especially among teenagers who have grown up with social media as a dominant force in their lives. Reading declines while passive consumption rises. The decline in traditional reading habits further support the theory that digital consumption may be playing a role in reduced cognitive performance. A 2022 survey found that fewer than half of Americans reported reading a book in the past year, a historic low. Meanwhile, screen time, especially on platforms like TikTok, Instagram, and YouTube, has surged, often favoring short, high speed content that discourages deep focus. That's why channels like mine don't grow, which is a good thing. I'm not complaining. This is too deep. It requires deep thought, it requires a high level of cognitive reasoning. The subject matters that we get into, the vast majority of people, they become bored. Shame, isn't it? Some researchers suggest that this shift towards passive, fragmented consumption of information rather than active, engaged learning could be weakening the brain's ability to focus, reason, and analyze complex topics. Let me just, if you just read this and you're looking at this, I mean, it is not that difficult to extrapolate what a potential freaking collapse of a future we're looking at. And it's not that far down the road. I'm going to get out of this article and I'm going to go directly into another one because apparently it's closer than we think. And this is MIT saying this, not me. Um, the changes may not be reversible. I mean, what the fuck? I mean, listen, I know it's an F bomb, but come on. Ay, ay, ay. Despite concerns about declining intelligence and attention, some experts argue that underlying human intellectual capacity remains intact. However, they emphasize that mental performance depends not only on raw ability, but also on how skills are developed and applied. And like when I read this, I thought, oh crap! And Congress is now getting into this thing. So we have a senator here, Josh Hawley. He's introduced legislation aimed at limiting children's screen time and regulating big tech's impact on young users. Well, Senator, how about getting the damn tech companies out of the section? Was it 203? How about changing that? Yeah, did you know that's why you can't? Yeah. hmm I'm just saying, Senator, you change that where they can no longer hide underneath that. Yeah, that's a game changer. Um, Hawley has proposed laws to ban addictive social media features and set a minimum age for children using the social media. I applaud this. But the problem is that the horses are already out of the barn, sir. It is gone. Um, so anyway, they get back into this report and how this began with the advent of the television. Radio was one thing, but television was a game changer. And say what you will, whether it be good or bad, it has now taken over. So, yeah, and I want to get into this one because we're not that far down the road. But all right. Yeah, here we go. So this is from MIT. MIT has predicted that society will collapse in the year 2040. A new study now shows we're ahead of the schedule and ahead of the curve, and the collapse may happen even sooner. Now, just to let you know, this story originally was posted in 2022. Advanced human civilizations have existed for more than 10,000 years. The first known complex civilization started in the fourth millennium BCE in Sumer, Mesopotamia. Since then, many great empires have come and gone, leaving behind their great legacies, artifacts, architectures, monuments, inventions, and innovations. Is our civilization about to collapse? When and how will human civilization end? These are the questions many people are asking. While it's hard to predict, historically, the collapse of past empires was due to four major factors. You ready? Political issues. And boy, is that a loaded one today. You know, we're on the war is coming, folks. I had this dream of Aphrodite. She was, you know, she is what the god of war. Anyway, yeah, social and cultural issues, got them. Environmental issues, got them. Economic issues, oh, we got that, and boy, is more coming. And the wind is blowing out there again. Which brings us to the latest prediction about the collapse of modern civilization. In 1972, a team of researchers at MIT predicted that rapid economic growth would lead to a societal collapse in the mid 21st century. They created a method to determine when the fall of society would take place. The study was one of the first economic studies ever to use computers sporting dynamic systematic models. It's worth noting that this study was done in 1972 before climate change was more than a blip on the scientific community's radar. They concluded that society was on track to collapse by the year 2040. Titled The Limits to Growth, the researchers warned that the limited availability of natural resources relative to rising cost would undermine continued economic growth by around the second decade of the 21st century. I mean, I'm telling you what, these cats, um, were they time travelers? Were they ability to channel into something? Because that's a remarkable prediction when you compare what they were saying nearly 50 years ago to what we're seeing right now. And it ain't the freaking Jetsons. Their system dynamic models, which was published by the Club of Rome, identified impending limits to growth. They called it the LTG. That meant industrial civilization was on track to collapse sometime within the 21st century due to overexploitation of planetary resources. Back then, their study was considered controversial and sparked much debate, I bet, with some pundits misrepresenting the findings and methods, according to Vice. Now, a new study shows that their projection is on the right track and on schedule. According to a fellow follow-up study conducted by KPMG, analysts found that we are ahead of schedule and the collapse may even happen sooner. In November 2020, yeah, that was, y'all remember those days, right? It says this, I think is Harrington, the director advisory of the internal audit and enterprise risk at major accounting firm KPMG, updated the LTG model in a published finding in the Yale Journal of Ecology. In horrendous estimates, the world population, industrial output, food, and resources will rapidly decline. The 2100s, excuse me, will be comparable to the 1900s, according to Vice. However, Harrington cautioned she's treating her research as a personal project as a precaution to see how well the MIT model holds up. Her study concluded that society has about another decade to change course and avoid collapse by investing in sustainable technologies and equitable human development. I don't know. Let me just take a quick poll. Do you think those who are currently in power and those who lust and thirst for that power, do you think they're going to change their minds? No. And how many times has humanity been bit in the ass by the one that they thought was going to be their savior? Yeah, religious, political, otherwise. So, I just don't see that happening. The original study is not without its critics. Some pointed out that this study has a very pessimistic way of modeling human innovation. So, should we be worried about the new study that shows we're ahead of schedule? Um, sure, nothing to see here. Just move along. Um, the answer to that question is no. It is here, and it's like, oh, crap. Now, so I found this interview, and I want to read this to you because this comes from an article called "The Collapse is Coming. Will Humanity Adapt?" This is an evolutionary biologist and a science fiction writer walk into the bar and mull over survival. So that's kind of the setting here. So here's the conversation. The following conversation was recorded in March 2024, and it's been edited for clarity and length. This generation person's name is Peter Watts. It says, in this corner, the biosphere, we spent a solid year higher than 1.5 degrees Celsius. We're wiping out species at a rate of somewhere between 10,000 to 100,000 annually. Insect populations are crashing, and we're losing the West Antarctic ice sheet. no matter what we do at this point, um, talks about um, the coming of pandemics, epidemics as well. We're expecting the exhaustion of all arable land around 2050, which is actually kind of moot because studies from institutions as variety as MIT and the University of Melbourne suggest that the global civilizational collapse is going to happen starting around 2040 or 2050. Anyone want to take bets that it's maybe going quicker? We don't know what AI assisted thinking is really going to do for us. No one can point to any study that says conclusively there's nothing to be alarmed about. There's no such study. Why? Well, it hasn't been done before, at least in our time. I mean, I remember back when they were making all kinds of ruckus, when the human population passed 5 billion. Remember Soylent Green, Charleston Heston? That's the kind of future that, they're projecting here. I don't know if it'll get to that. But so the claims were when we hit 5 billion, oh, not enough food to feed everybody, not enough resources. Well, here we are. I think it's 8.2, 8.3, and I don't know who has the clicker, but anyway. So now the new number is like you hit the 9 billion. Well, at the current rate, we'll be there in a couple of years. So what are they going to do? Raise the bar now to 10, 12, 15 billion? And if those 15 billion souls who are yet to be here get here, let's say within the next decade and a half, surely they're going to want to have a lifestyle of leisure, luxury, and yeah, plug into the matrix, right? Um, in response to all of this, the last, what they call COP, was held in um, was presided over by the CEO of an oil company. Yeah, is pretty much the same thing. We're headed for the cliff. And not only have we not hit the brakes yet, we still have our foot on the gas. In that corner, Dan Brooks and Sal Augusto with the Darwinian Survival Guide. So take it away, Dan. Guide us to survival. What's the strategy here? So this is Dan responding back. Well, the primary thing that we have to understand or internalize is that what we're dealing with is what is called a no technological solution problem. Okay? In other words, technology is not going to save us, real or imaginary. We have to change our behavior. If we change our behavior, we have sufficient technology to save ourselves. If we don't change our behavior, we are unlikely to come up with a magical technological fix to compensate for our bad behavior. Okay. I'm just asking a simple question. Um, can that be done? I mean, I have this wild conspiracy theory that, when we send people off to like these power plants in DC, is that the pod people take over. They may look the same, they may have everything that would be the same, but they ain't the same. That's all I'm saying. Because I don't know. I mean, I don't see that many saints in power structures, corporations. Do you? Uh-uh. I mean, they want their shit, man, and they want it to be up here and they want it to be above everybody else, right? And so everybody else starts trying to climb up there. Yeah. He said, this is why Saul and I have adapted a position that we should not be talking about sustainability, but about survival. in terms of humanity's future. Sustainability has come to mean what kind of technological fixes can we come up with that will allow us to continue to do business as usual without paying a penalty for it. It's like this whole thing with Elon Musk. I mean, the insanity of humanity. I mean, it's like the dude, all he says, man, I'm just showing you that you got a bunch of thieves, you got a bunch of liars, and they're robbing you blind, and they're getting rich, and their friends are getting, it's a Ponzi scheme. And the next thing you know, you got people protesting the guy, and you got to ask, oh, so what you're protesting is that you believe thievery, you believe stealing, you believe lying is, in fact, an admirable human characteristic to have. Seriously? I mean, talk about derangement syndrome. Holy crap. As evolutionary biologists, we understand that all actions carry biological consequences. We know that relying on indefinite growth and uncontrolled growth is unsustainable in the long term. But that's the behavior we're seeing now. Drill, baby, drill, right? Darwin told us in 1859 that what we had been doing for the last 10,000 years or so was not going to work. And I think that's something that, as as we look at this and delve into it, I mean, 10,000 years isn't anything. And the experiment is obviously failing. And so nature, of her own discourse, she has ways of dealing with this. Now, I don't know if the cedars come back and how that begins to go. I don't know. Um, but it says, stepping back a bit, Darwin told us in 1859 that what we had been doing for the last 10,000 years or so was not going to work, but people didn't want to hear that message. So along came sociologist who said, it's okay, I can fix it with Darwinism. This guy's name was Herbert Spencer, and he said, I can fix Darwinism. We'll just call it a natural selection. But instead of survival of what's good enough to survive in the future, we're going to call it survival of the fittest. And it's whatever is best now. Spencer was instrumental in convincing most biologists to change their perspective from evolution is a long term survival to evolution is a short term adaptation. And that was consistent with the notion of maximizing short term profits economically, maximizing your chances of being reelected, maximizing the collection plate every Sunday in the churches, and people were quite happy with this. People do not like bad news. People do not like being told that their behavior is somewhat or is reprehensible. Human nature. Well, fast forward, and that's how things are working. How have things worked out now? Not very well. And it turns out that Spencer's idea were not, in fact, consistent with Darwin's ideas. They represented a major change in perspective. What Saul and I suggest is that if we go back to Darwin's original message, we're not only find an explanation for why we're in the problems and the predicaments we are today, but interestingly enough, it also gives us some insights into the kinds of behavioral changes we might want to undertake if we want to survive as a species. And it goes on, uh, this conversation, that it may be already too late. We may have already tipped the evolutionary scales, that the only way that it can balance itself back out is through a correction. That means us on a very large scale. Um, I'll read another little snippet here. It says, it is conceivable that if all of humanity suddenly decided to change its behavior right now, this very second, we would emerge after 2050 with most everything intact, and we would be okay. We don't think that's realistic, however. It is a possibility, but we don't think that's a realistic possibility. We think that, in fact, most of humanity is committed to business as usual. And that's what we're really talking about. What can we begin doing now to try to shorten the period of time after the collapse before we, quote unquote, recover? In other words, and this is the analogy with Asimov's Foundation trilogy, if we do nothing, there's going to be a collapse and it'll take 30,000 years to recover from. But if we start doing things now, then it might only take 1,000 years to recover. So, using that analogy, what can some human beings start to do now that would shorten the period of time necessary to recover? Could we, in fact, recover within a generation? Could we be without a global internet for 20 years, but within 20 years, could we have a global internet back again? Hmm. Peter asks, he says, so what you're basically talking about is the sociological equivalent of the Norwegian seed bank, as an example. And he said, well, that's really a good analogy to use because, of course, as you probably know, the temperature around the Norwegian seed bank are so high now that the seed bank itself is in some jeopardy of survival. The place where it has chosen because it was thought that it was going to be cold forever and everything would be fine, and you could store all those seeds now. Well, the one thing, and I'm going to stop right there. The one thing that they did not take into consideration um, was the pole shift. And I find it interesting in correlation of dates. I'm a real fan of Ben Davidson. Lynn and I met him in Denver years ago. Um, and you know, the Adam and Eve story by Chan Thomas. And if you look at other events, other perspectives, this 2050 seems to be kind of a meeting place. Um, if you think that, could the sun go with a micronova? I don't know. Will the pole flip? I don't think it's going to be a flipped as much of it is a new location. But wherever it ends up, it's going to be not where it was 100, 200 years ago. And this brings weather changes. It brings changes in how the atmospheric. My point is, it seems like everything seems to be coalescing to this. And so I went into my study of my material back in the days when I was deeply involved in biblical prophecy. And I find it interesting that there are correlations that if someone had the ability to, say, 1,000 years ago, or maybe a couple hundred years ago, and puts it into a writing that we think is thousands of years old, it is interesting that it seems to all be paralleling a path. So if these ancient prophecies are true, then it means something has been purposely guiding us in this direction. So I cannot reasonably just say, well, then it was just human nature. I don't think so. Definitely appears that there may have been intervention uh, happening. But again, dealing with that and the fact that we're declining in intelligence, that's alarming. We've talked about it. I mean, I came up in the time of sales and marketing, and, you know, I could remember you're just give me your business card. And once I put it into my Rolodex, I could recall it back out. But people can't do that today. I don't even think I could do that today. And yeah, and it gets back into this whole thing that so what is ahead of this eventual collapse? Well, war is like all over the place. And if you look at what's going on today, uh, I'll put it this way: that's a game of chicken I don't think we should be playing, but it's heading to something. I wrote down here that scholars, academics, theologians, politicians are basically all impacted by this cognitive decline. And that's why I'm thanks, and I know I'm going a little bit over, but I so appreciate all of you. You're deep thinkers. Hey, Blazing River, what's up? Um, I think these are refuges. These are those enclaves where deep thought is appreciated, admired. And when you look at this and have the ability to look at it from multiple perspectives and then extrapolate from that back into the whole, I mean, it's a treasure trove of knowledge. Each and every one of you are that. And for that, I am grateful and thankful. Hello, Gaia. How are you, darling? Good to see you. Well, is something breaking the firmament? That's a good point. Bonnie, I like that. I say yes. I'm I don't know about y'all, but I've been having some, that goes without saying, but and maybe it's just that, if you open yourself up to the possibility, it's amazing how expectation is met with satisfaction. And if consciousness is transferable at death, because each and every one of us are going to die. Technically, we're already dead. Um, I mean, if you say that the future is the future, then that year means in the year 2000, 2200, huh? We'd all be dead, ashes, whatever. Um, but getting to the point, if conscience is transferable, then that means that our perception of life is really wrong. But no, it doesn't really matter. That we're going to exist in some state after this. I happen to be in that camp. I believe that. And therefore, I do believe in the goddesses, the gods. I have no doubt. And I think that they're of such a nature that if you basically project outward, channel them, they're there. They really are. And sometimes they don't say a lot. It's like, yeah, we're listening. Hello, Stephanie Marie. How are you? Um, so there we go. Hey, Jenny. Good to see you tomorrow. Hello, Millie. What's up? Um, and I think that the firmament is it's another realm. Maybe that's where some go and some stay down and terraform. I don't know. I don't think that, you know, going out into the universe, I think and this is just me, just a thought, that if as a spirit being, you'd probably want to stay close to, your people. You know what I mean? Just me. I mean, I've got my beach and I see it all the time. It's a great place. And the thing about it is, you walk into the back and you've got this valley, this vista that leads up to this mountain. And it's just really kind of cool. But hey, welcome to Wayne's World, right? All right, folks. Hey, Brian, thank you. Have a good day and basto to you. Be of service to others. That's it. Yeah, absolutely. Regina, what's up? Um, so I'll go back and read the chat. I always like doing that. All right, folks. Went over a little bit, but okay. Hey, if we're going to have a collapse, I mean, we're going to love every minute we can, right? Watch it on the rerun. All right, folks, much love to you. See you tomorrow with the ladies. Scotty Boy, you said I'll be viewing your beach. Hey, clothing is optional. I mean, I'll just contend with this. I've never seen a naked ghost. Never. I mean, what do they got? Some kind of a, rule over there or something? I mean, what? It's just, it's like, oh, so who's making these rules here? I mean, yeah, I don't know. Truth, it does go by. It's thank you. It's a lot of fun. I still want to know why are there no naked ghosts? The following realm is rated PG only. Okay, sure. The spirit comes from the spiral bunny. Okay. All right, Jenny, see you tomorrow, dear, and be with Miss Trina and everyone else. So have a great rest of the St. Patty's Day. And if you're into that, moderation, moderation. All right.